Welcome to Common Sense. The Common Sense program is a series of shows that feature interviews with very interesting people so that we can learn in a clear, concise, and direct way who these folks are, what they do, and what makes sense to them and what doesn't. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, C Johnston, who's assigned to the Cleveland field office. Charlie, welcome to Common Sense.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Okay. Well, what brought you to this part of Ohio,
Okay.
Charlie?
It's fine.
I was going to say Chuck.
Yeah, that's fine. I grew up in Northeast Ohio.
Okay.
So family, we were all raised here, went to undergraduate and law school in Northeast Ohio. So
okay.
When you do get into the FBI, they often send you to other places. And so this was my third duty station. I was able to come home and come back to Northeast Ohio.
Wow, that was great. That worked out.
Yeah, it did.
What responsibilities does an Assistant Special Agent in Charge in the Cleveland field office have?
Okay, so there's a number. So I'm Assistant Special Agent in Charge of what we call the white collar branch.
Okay.
So I have 6 investigative programs that I'm responsible for, and a number of special agents, task force officers, professional support employees, and others that work in our programs. So my programs include cyber criminal, organized crime or criminal enterprises, major theft programs, public corruption, civil rights, complex financial crimes, which includes a whole cadre of different types of frauds and different things that we'll talk about today, healthcare fraud, and I also have a team of forensic accountants that are assigned to my branch that we integrate into the other investigations.
Wow, you're a busy man.
It is busy, yes. It's a busy branch.
Okay, and how large is it? An office, is it?
So the Cleveland FBI office has about 300 employees, and that's not all special agents. That's, again, anything that you would have that you have in a business, we have to do in-house. So we have a number of support employees that actually keep the office going. My branch is pretty large. If you include the task force officers and everything, it's about 90 people at any given time in my branch.
Okay. What is the mission of the FBI?
So the mission is to protect and defend the United States against terrorist attacks and foreign intelligence efforts, and to uphold the criminal laws and the Constitution of the U.S. And there's a number of layers underneath that that we look at, but that's the main mission of the FBI.
Okay. What are the FBI's priorities?
The priorities, which change at times, but I can tell you that the number one priority is protecting the United States from terrorist attack, and that hasn't changed since 9/11, 2001.
Understand.
On September 10th, 2001, Rudy, the number one priority of the FBI was organized crime, and everything changed that next day.
Yeah.
But the next highest priority is protecting the United States from foreign intelligence and espionage and cyber operations against the U.S., working those complex criminal cyber. And then there's a number of other priorities that the FBI works. At times they shift, but the top 3 haven't changed.
Okay. What are the major types of crimes an FBI field office investigates?
Okay, and that answer could change depending on where you're at. So if you're in the New York field office, for instance, the things you might work there are different than what you might work in, say Wyoming or somewhere like that. Somewhere where you have an international border also changes what you work. But in Cleveland, we run the gamut. Aside from counterterrorism, counterespionage, counterintelligence operations, theft of trade secrets, copyright infringement, those types of things. We have the whole gamut of federal criminal violations. And that's the traditional stuff you might think of, like bank robberies, kidnappings, gangs, drugs, organized crime of various groups, public corruption cases, complex financial crimes, bank frauds, crimes against children, which is a major thing. And any of those types of crimes, that's what's worked.
Okay. Tell us about cybercrime and the typical frauds and scams that would fit into that category.
Sure, and that is something we can talk a whole episode
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
And I'll try not to do that.
3 or 4 hours.
So just in general, there's cybercrime, and then there's cyber-enabled frauds, which we'll talk about. So cybercrime could be like the ransomware, which I think we might cover a little bit later, or those intrusions, those actual cyber-based intrusions. But there are a number of cyber-enabled frauds where everything that people do now is on a device, whether it's your phone or computer. And these are the frauds that you hear of in the news, the tech support frauds, the romance scams, the grandparent scams are somewhat committed using the cyber tools. There are a number of those frauds, investment frauds. Almost anything nowadays is going to use some type of device or communications tool to help commit those crimes.
Okay. Do more scams happen over the phone rather than the internet?
Okay, that's a great question because generally the answer would be no, more over the internet. But what do you do with your phone nowadays? It's a computer. You walk around with your phone and connect to everything. You're connected to the internet through your phone, through almost anything. So they happen over the phone often. And that's a computer that goes with people 24/7. You see them in their hands all the time.
Okay.
So it provides easy access. As good as phones are for a lot of things, and as good as the internet is for a lot of things, it also creates opportunities to be exploited by criminal actors.
Understand. Now, just to talk in general, what's a computer virus?
A computer virus. Okay, so if you've ever heard of malware. Okay, so that's a general term for malicious software.
Okay.
And that is something used by criminal actors to inject into your system, to get other things onto it, or to take control of your system and create problems for you, right? So a virus might be something that they put on your device once you've accessed the malware on your system. A virus basically is something that is just going to either make your system not run the way it's supposed to keep it in simple terms, or to create something that would spread to the networks and systems that you connect to. They can spread viruses through utilizing you, basically. So think of a virus just simply as a sickness on your computer that's going to make it to where it does not do what it's supposed to do.
Okay. So how does this scammer infect your computer with the virus?
So generally what we're seeing is through, first off, the main thing, if I can stress anything today, it's these unsolicited contacts that people get. Right? That's a key phrase, unsolicited contacts. And the general way that scammers are accessing their victims is through unsolicited contacts. That could be an email that you get that appears to be legit. That could be a pop-up on your computer saying that there's a problem with your device. That could be a text. That could be a phone call. If it's unsolicited, you should think twice about it. And then oftentimes through those, Rudy, they'll have links or attachments in there that they want you to access. And that is a way that they're putting the malware on your device.
Okay. What's a phantom hacker?
Phantom hacker is a term that we gave to a particular type of scheme. And this is important to talk about because we have seen an uptick in the phantom hacker. So it's just what you might think. There's not really a hacker, but the bad actors want you to think that there's a hacker. So what they would do is generally in 3 steps. There's going to be that unsolicited contact. It may be a pop-up on your device that says your device is at risk for some type of virus or some type of problem. Call this number and we'll help you with it. Or hit this link and we'll help you with it. So that's step 1. Step 2 is they make the contact with the victim. And this is where it's important. Don't ever give remote access to anybody based off an unsolicited contact you got. Because in the phantom hacker, that's the step that they do. They tell the victim, hey, we need to access your computer to run a check on our end to make sure that there's not a virus. They give them that access, and what they're able to do is locate your most lucrative accounts on your bank account, your investments. And then the third step of that is they'll even connect you with somebody on the phone that says, we're with your bank or your financial institution, or we're with the government. You need to move your money because your device is in jeopardy. You need to move your money to a safe account. They're going to walk you how to do that, and you're moving your money to them. And so it is a heavily scripted, quick strike because they can identify lucrative accounts right away.
Okay. Now another term, what is phishing with a PH
Yes.
or spoofing?
Phishing, yeah. So phishing and spoofing are very similar. Phishing is a technique that's used by these bad actors, these criminal actors, and it all comes down to them trying to seem like they're somebody they're not, or to build that trust. So phishing might be it's going to be an email that you get that appears to be from your bank. They want you to believe that that's an email from your bank. And they're phishing because they're hoping that they can get you to provide information back to them. And they're very successful. What it may be is actually, instead of your particular bank, it may be one letter off or one number off. Or instead of the letter S, it might be a $sign. And not too many people can catch that. There have been some very good ones.
Okay.
The fraud can be very deep, but that's phishing or spoofing. Spoofing is purporting to be something or someone that you're not. And so they're spoofing. They want you to believe they're a trusted source, when in reality they're not, because then you will provide the information they want that allows them to commit the frauds.
Okay. What groups of people do scammers favor for victimizing?
There are some nuances to this, depending on the type of scam. But in generally, they're looking at our older populations.
Okay.
Specifically 60 and older is a group that is targeted a lot.
They may not be familiar with computers
Possibly,
as well.
but also in that sense too, oftentimes this is a group that has funds available, that has
Okay.
investments.
All right.
That or maybe a little more established, maybe a little bit more vulnerable to some of the tricks that they exploit. So different groups. Now, when you're talking about like a cryptocurrency fraud, for instance, you may have heard the term pig butchering. We don't like that term much, but that's the term that's been given. The target group is a little bit younger, possibly because maybe 60-year-olds are not dabbling in the cryptocurrency world. So again, there's some nuances to that, but generally the older communities are where we get a lot of the victims.
Understand. Are statistics available for losses sustained by different victim groups?
Sure, there are some statistics available, and any of the numbers we talk about today are going to be 2023 numbers.
Okay.
2024 numbers aren't available yet, but the things that I polled and looked at in preparation for this were specific to Ohio. For instance, in 2023, for victim groups 60 and over, just for frauds reported to our systems that you can report to, $64 million in loss in victims, just in Ohio.
Wow.
Just for 60 and over.
Wow.
So that's a sizable loss if you're talking about just our state. The hardest hit target group for instance, tech support fraud, which is one that we can talk about, are 60 and over. That's the hardest hit in terms of complaints. 20-some thousand complaints in Ohio alone in that age group in 2023. So the numbers are staggering, but there are statistics, and again, it depends on which specific type of fraud. Sometimes there's changes in that.
Mm-hmm. How are scammers able to contact their most likely victims?
Yeah.
We talked about what happens, you're solicited, but
Yeah.
how do they pick the most likely victims?
So again, the key is that focus on the unsolicited contacts. If you call Microsoft and you ask them for help and they call you back, that's not unsolicited. That is something.
Understand.
But if Microsoft hits you up, right? So you're asking, so how do they hit people up? Oftentimes through social engineering, people put a lot of information out there on their own, social media and different things like that. There's a lot of information available to people that's open and out there. So they look at that. They look at. You can Google search and get people's things. But another thing that we've seen a lot are these unsolicited texts you might get. They're just texting to see if this is a real number. And nice people, maybe Rudy like yourself, would say, hey, sorry, you have the wrong number.
Yeah.
Right, that's what a normal person would do.
Yeah.
Well, now that's saying, okay, now we know we have a number. And then they can start. You may get a pop-up 3 days later. So they verify their information that way. And frankly, databases of information that has been compromised, It's available on the internet for a fee.
You hear about that all the time.
These criminal groups work together, and there may be one that their whole job is selling information. We know these are legitimate email addresses and email phones, and so then that's out there as well.
I think you've answered this already. How do scammers gain your trust?
Yeah, and this is startling at how good they are. They're very good. The scammers are very good. They're heavily scripted. We've made arrests where we've recovered the scripts, where they're walking through every type of scenario. If the victim says this, then you say this. If they say this, so they're very good at it. They build that trust, but oftentimes they'll also exploit a time sensitivity. Like, hey, you need to make this decision now on this investment because this is only good through today. Or they'll put some kind of urgency in there.
Yeah.
And then as you may know, in the grandparent scams and stuff like that, they're pulling on those emotional strings.
You bet.
Where they're going to focus on, hey, your family member's in trouble and they need your help. So they're very good at what they do. And we have people of all walks of life that get tricked into this.
What steps should you take to avoid becoming a victim?
That's a great question, and if we could hammer anything home, this would
That's
be
a
it, right?
big one.
Number one, keep your accounts password protected. Strong passwords, number one.
Okay.
Number two, have people that you can talk to. Like if something doesn't seem right and it comes to you, especially unsolicited, or some offer that is, you really have to make a decision right now, talk to somebody that you trust about that. Number three, just verify the emails you get with links. We used to say to people, scan your attachments before you open them. Now we say don't even open them. But there are ways that you can scan the attachments, and if it's something you're expecting, that makes a difference than some unsolicited email that you get that has an attachment. But the main thing is to keep the updates done on your system. Mm-hmm. If Dell and Apple and all those want to push out the security updates, do those. Have people that you can talk to. And then also, if you get an unsolicited contact from your bank that says, we need to verify your current address and phone number and your current income status to keep your accounts, say thank you, and then you go directly to your bank, whether that's through the phone numbers that you have or going to your bank, and say, I'll provide that information this way, as opposed to providing private and personal information over a phone call, text, or email.
That's wise.
Yeah.
What should you do if you've been contacted by a scammer?
Okay. There's a number of steps that we would want you to take right away. Number one is contact law enforcement. And I do mean contact local law enforcement as well as the FBI.
Okay.
So the ways to contact the FBI in particular is ic3.gov. That's the Internet Crime Complaint Center.gov. And it's a website where we can explain a little bit about what happens to that information, but that's an important way to get a hold of the FBI. And you can pick the phone up and call your local FBI office as well. Mm-hmm. After contacting law enforcement, we would want you to contact your financial institutions to make sure that there hasn't been anything suspicious on your accounts and your investment brokerage, whatever it may be. But also, depending on how the scam unfolded, you can contact the platform. So if it was through Google email, you can contact Google and let them know about it. Or if it's through a particular app or Facebook or whatever it may be, we would want you to contact those platforms as well to advise them that this is potentially a fraudulent contact, mm-hmm. and they're utilizing your platform, to perpetrate it.
Okay. That address, ic3.gov, will be at the bottom of the screen.
Excellent. Excellent.
Now, when you report a scam, what information does the FBI want?
Okay, so the FBI is going to want as much information as possible. So that would be any ways that the perpetrators contacted you. So whether if it's email or text or Snapchat, whatever it may be, we would want to know about that. We would want to know any phone numbers, email addresses, that type of thing that they utilized. We'd also want to talk to you about were there conversations where you spoke to somebody. Describe those conversations to us. A lot of these criminal groups resolve to other countries. Oftentimes we hear that the callers have accents. Well, we would like to talk about that.
Yeah, what accents?
Yeah, let's talk about those accents. Let's talk about what you may know. And If there's a text thread going back and forth, screenshot the text thread because we want that communication. We want to know where you're at in the process of the scam. There may be ways that we can jump in the middle of that and work.
And help, yeah.
Yes.
What is the FBI's recovery asset team? They use RAT.
Yeah, so it's not a
How
great,
do they operate?
Not a great acronym. So the Recovery Access Team was started in 2018, if I recall, and it was started through ic3.gov. So that's that Internet Crime Complaint Center. And this is the way for the FBI to be involved more expediently in getting involved. So if somebody gets a hold of IC3 and makes a complaint that they have been, they lost money through a fraud, what the Recovery Asset Team will do is it's a relationship with financial institutions. And what they will do is immediately try to get those funds frozen so that it doesn't go any further in the scheme.
Okay.
They'll get those funds frozen, and then IC3 will try to get that complaint to the appropriate FBI field office, which may be the Cleveland FBI.
Okay.
And so that would come to my branch, and then our investigators are then able to take the next step. And now the money's frozen, but we would try to work on seizing it, getting it back, or working it to the next level to see where that money was intended to go and try to get to the actual bad actors in the case. So I think since 2018, the Recovery Asset Team has been involved in about 3,000 activities.
Wow.
And they have a 71% success rate. So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And things move so quickly, and I think we're getting better and better at it throughout. So it's important that we're notified early and have a chance to freeze that money.
Okay, that's wonderful. What is the financial fraud kill chain?
Okay, so that's another tool or method or great relationship that is established. So when we're talking about the Recovery Asset Team, that's going to be domestic only, and that's going to be for things that happen, domestically and involve domestic banks.
Understand.
We're able to utilize some relationships and get the money frozen. When we're talking about financial fraud kill chain, that is an extensive relationship law enforcement has throughout the financial industry. When there is a wire transfer and it's over $50,000 and it's going international, and this is a big if law enforcement is notified within 72 hours of the initial transfer, there is a really, really high chance of getting that money stopped.
Okay.
And that's what the financial fraud kill chain is. That is a technique that is employed upon first notice. Oftentimes we'll do that before we really even know the facts of the case. We get that going so that it stops the wire transfer from going to international. Again, we mentioned oftentimes these criminal groups are based overseas, and the financial transactions will ultimately resolve overseas. So the financial fraud kill chain is a way to inject law enforcement in the middle of that and stop those funds from leaving the country.
Okay, so it's really important to report a fraud early.
Yes, and even report an attempted fraud. Even
Okay.
if you didn't lose anything, that doesn't mean that we're going to open a federal investigation on it, but that information is important for us to have to triage with other like information that comes in.
Okay. Is any compensation available to people who have been victimized from the government or other sources?
Yeah. So a couple things on that. In any of our cases, we do seek to get the funds back, right? And through the legal process and through the criminal process, with a conviction, we seek to get restitution back for the victim.
Okay.
That's one way. But there is the Crime Victim Act. It's a DOJ initiative that does offer some funds, and that fund is built upon restitution from other cases. So they try to build a pool of money that is available for victims.
Okay.
But one thing that's important to know is the Department of Justice and the FBI each have victim witness advocates that work in our office. They're FBI employees, and they work hand in hand with our victims to kind of walk them through what might be available for them, what resources might be out there. Because these people are losing their life savings.
That's great. That's great.
And so that is something that our victim advocates are very good at least trying to find resources available for people.
What will the FBI do after you report a scam?
Okay, and this is a great question because sometimes people think we're going to call them every day and keep them updated on it, and that's not likely to happen.
Okay.
We do try to communicate as much as we can with our victims, but we're often kind of handcuffed, to use that phrase,
Okay.
on what we can share with somebody based upon the techniques and the investigative
But you're
steps.
working on it. Yeah.
But we're working on it, and you know, the victim advocate would be somebody working with our victim throughout. But we're going to take that information, and first thing we do is usually check to see, is this hitting on any other investigations that we already have? A phone number that comes in as fraudulent, I mean, Rudy, you can Google a phone number and it may say this is a fraud phone number. I mean, it's out there in open source. So we'll check that first. It may be an existing case that we have where we have a target group already identified.
Okay.
And so that's excellent. This is another victim we can add to this case, and it's more evidence that we can use. So we check that first. Oftentimes we'll do, see what's out there open source to see what information's available. If it gets to the point where there's a full open investigation and we have legal process available, like the federal prosecutors, the U.S. attorneys say, yes, let's do this. We can use grand jury subpoenas and other things to get records in that we might need to kind of piece together the investigation. So oftentimes the information is being looked at and it's being collated with other things, aggregate losses and that type of thing, and it's being investigated, but we aren't able to update a victim probably as much as they would like, and there's a lot of reasons why on that, but it's also to protect the integrity of investigative steps that we might want to do, and we don't want to jeopardize those opportunities.
Understand. Do scammers sell victim contact information to other scammers for their use, or even use it themselves with the hope of re-victimizing you? Yeah,
that's always a concern, the re-victimizing thing. That really is. But I would say yes. Listen, the scammers are in it for one thing, and that's money. And any way that they can make money off of it, whether it's doing their particular scam, trying to make money that way, and then selling the information on the dark web, for instance. That's the underground internet where you can really find anything that you want to find on there for a price. We see there are just troves of information available on there, people's personal identifiable information. So yes, the scammers do sell it, and we do think that at times they maintain it and re-victimize somebody. And that's why it's important to take the steps of cleaning all your accounts, changing your passwords to something that you control, and keeping an eye on your credit reports and your investments and your bank accounts.
That'd be wise.
Yes.
Can you search online to determine whether a business is legitimate?
That is something we encourage people to do. So you can do a few things in that sense. Number one, you can look for a history of that business. Number one, you can make sure, they've been around a while and they have this or that. But I know, bad actors can create that stuff. You can look at Better Business Bureau records to see. You can look at state, and all of these are available online. You can look at state, the state records, like are they a registered business in this state? Secretary of State records, I guess that would be.
Understand.
There are ways to do that, but you can also look at the email addresses and the extensions. If you think you're dealing with a U.S. custom or a U.S. company and they have an extension on their email address that resolves to another country, that is going to be a red flag for you to take a look at. But again, I think it's looking for a history, looking for a background of this company.
Okay. What would you recommend that internet users have antivirus software that is periodically updated?
Sure, and we can't recommend or endorse a particular one, but first and foremost is keeping updates with your computer, with your device, and the providers. Those are important to keep, and I learned a hard lesson in my own life 10 years ago for not keeping up with them, and it gets to a point where if you're not doing the updates, then you can't do the new updates. They just won't jump right in the middle and pick up where that left off. So keeping up to date with those security updates and patches that the companies put out, because they do a very good job at recognizing vulnerabilities and making a patch for it and pushing that out. So that is one thing. And there are commercially available, reputable companies that provide, malware scanners, virus scanners, and that type of thing that I would recommend that they keep on their devices. And again, keep those updated. Those companies get paid a lot of money to try to stay ahead of the threat, and they do a pretty good job at that. And when they recognize a threat, they send out patches and updates.
Okay. How should you handle attachments? You talked a little
Yes.
bit about it.
In an ideal world, you shouldn't handle
Don't know.
attachments or links, but I know that's not the case. So listen, if it's something you're anticipating, like your doctor's office says, we're going to send you this form when we hang up, you're going to get it in your email. Okay, you can still deal with that. There are ways to scan your attachments before you open them up on your devices. And so that would be the primary way. Number one, to make sure it's something you're expecting. If you get an unsolicited email that has an attachment and says, oh, access this to provide information or to learn about, don't do that.
Here's a photo.
We get those. Like if your friends' accounts have been hacked, and you'll get a random from somebody you know, and it'll have a link and say, oh, here are the photos from 2 years ago I meant to send you. No.
Yeah, I get those.
They would have called you first and probably said, oh, I found these photos from 2 years ago, I'm going to send them to you.
Yeah.
So if it's unsolicited, just don't bother with it. If it's something you were expecting, again, run it through a scan on your system to make sure there's nothing that's, they can pick up on there.
Okay. How often is the FBI able to conduct investigations that lead to a successful prosecution of scammers?
Yeah, so I don't have a hard number for you, but I can tell you that it is an ongoing effort. We have teams, for instance, in my branch, what we call our white collar squad that works the complex financial crimes, and our cyber criminal squad, that they are some of the brightest people we have in the Bureau. And there's some subject matter expertise that we have right here in Cleveland. And they're running investigations that span the globe, like, bad actors in Ghana or in other countries. We're running them right here in Cleveland. And it's ongoing. The number of cases are ongoing. Unfortunately, there are times when there's an uptick of a particular type of crime.
Okay.
But it's ongoing. We have had success. Again, I can't give you a hard number, but just know, again, the earlier the better for us to know about it in terms of getting somebody's money back. And we've kind of shifted our focus. It's always been, I want to put handcuffs on the bad guys, right? And bring them to court. Well, sometimes we realize those bad guys might be in Nigeria. It's not realistic that we're going to put handcuffs on them. But if we can take their money and take it and give it back to, Uncle Joe and Aunt Mary who lost their life savings, that's become more important. And so in cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's Office and our local partners, we have more of an effort at trying to go get those funds back and bring them back.
Okay. What is the National Elder Fraud Hotline?
The national, that's a very important thing for people to know about, and that is a joint effort. The FBI, Department of Justice, there are local law enforcement agencies. Everybody's part of this, and the hotline is something we want people to utilize. Look, we mentioned throughout this episode that some of the older community is where they're the main targets of these violations of these criminal actors. And we want people to know that they can reach out to the fraud hotline, the elder fraud hotline.
And the number is going to appear on the bottom of the screen.
And they can talk about those things that we used to say, if it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, take a pause and think about it. Well, call that number. Talk to them about it. That's somebody, if you don't have anybody in your family that you can talk to somebody at this line. You're like, I think potentially somebody might be trying to pull a fraud on me. And that's something that we want them to be able to utilize.
Okay. And I also have, what is the FBI tip line? And that'll also appear on the bottom of the screen.
Great. Yes, the FBI tip line. Listen, we want, everybody's heard, see something, say something, and that's the truth. I mean, we understood in law enforcement that our partnerships with law enforcement are important. Partnerships with the intelligence community is important, but our partnerships in the communities and just with everyday people and with private sector businesses is huge. And we need those partnerships. We need the information. There's something we might not know about, or we may have 5 pieces to a puzzle, and something that you can provide might be piece number 6 that helps us move further along in this puzzle. Teamwork, exactly. I mean, we're all in this together. We live in these communities. We're invested in the communities, and we want to protect the communities that we live in.
What helpful resources are available on your website?
So you can go to fbi.gov, and I'm telling you can spend a lot of time there. Any topic that you want to read about is available there. And I often tell people when we're talking about specific topics, like, go there because there's more information than I can tell you. So there's access to statistics. There's access to the Internet Crime Complaint Center. I mean, listen, they get over 2,500 complaints a day at the Internet Crime Complaint Center. So that type of information is out there. Public service announcements that the FBI might be putting out to warn people of specific scams, specific frauds, or different types of crimes that are going on. Those would be accessible there as well.
Okay, you have the FBI's elder fraud reports on that.
Yeah, and there'll be other reports that are available too at times specific to certain states. So you can read how Ohio's doing. So we're fifth in the number of complaints involving fraud. We're not the fifth biggest state in the country, but we're fifth in the number. So that's not a great thing for us.
That's not lucky, yeah.
No, that's not lucky. We're behind like California, New York, Texas, and Florida. Those are huge states.
I got you.
But unfortunately, we're fifth in that. And then if you look at dollar amounts lost or specific types of crimes reported, we rank, unfortunately, pretty highly as well in those.
Okay. How can you be contacted? There's a telephone number, a general number?
1-800-CALL-FBI.
Okay.
They can call or they can go to ic3.gov to report this. And the type of information they're going to want there is very important because they're going to want at ic3.gov, they're going to want what phone number called you or what email address sent to you. What did you get from them? And the important thing of that is they're going to take that information and compare it in basically an international database. And they'll find the right office. Just because you're sitting here, in Avon or Avon Lake and you might be the victim of a crime doesn't mean the bad guys are here. So IC3 is able to triage that information and find out that, that information is being worked by Jacksonville. And so send that directly to the FBI in Jacksonville. That's the investigative team that needs that information most. So that information is important, and that would be put in that way. We have the National Threat Operations Center, we call it NTOC, and it's like the federal 911 almost. It receives the calls, takes the information, and pushes it out to the appropriate offices.
Okay. I know I think on the bottom of your screen there'll be a local a telephone number for the Cleveland field office and also the website address. We'll put those on the bottom of the screen. But
the important thing with it, and we do want people to talk to us, but for instance, if you have been the victim of it happens in real estate transactions a lot. They get a phishing or a spoofed email that says, hey, you got to send your payment to the title company. We have a new bank account. Here it is.
Okay.
Send it to this. And you're wiring a lot of money. People are wiring $100,000 for a real estate transaction. The reason we want people to go to ic3.gov is because they can get that financial fraud kill chain going right away within those 72 hours.
Understand.
And there's a great chance that we can freeze that money. At least it doesn't go any further in the process.
Okay. Well, I ask this question of everyone I interview. In summary, what makes sense to you and what doesn't?
Okay. What makes sense is being able to talk to your viewers like this. Number one, we want people to know we're here in Cleveland. We cover the top 40 counties in Ohio.
Okay.
We cover every federal violation and all the other things that we talked about. But we're here, and we want people to talk to us. Listen, we have people that maybe are embarrassed that they fell victim to some of these frauds, but we have people from all walks of life that fall victim to this. Okay, so it's not a point of embarrassment. It's let's share this information. There might be something we can do to help you. There might be something we can do to help the wider community. So it's important that we're a partnership together in this, law enforcement and the community together.
Okay. Well, bless you and the FBI for helping and preventing these frauds and helping people even after the fraud is done and your life savings or substantial portion of money. So bless you and the FBI for doing this. And I just wish you well and good luck in doing your job.
Thank you so much for those words, and thank you for having me come on and represent the FBI. It's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully something for your viewers resonates and helps them.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Please send us comments and questions that you may have. If you would like to appear on the show, or you know an interesting person who would like to appear, please send us their contact information and we'll take it from there. And remember, seatbelts save lives.